because I think, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, Alex, but I always felt that there were ideological differences within the community of defense lawyers.
So our legal duty only entails the legal side. As long as we check those boxes, nobody will say, but did you help that person? Did you actually help that soul? And that box never gets checked or asked.
I don't think we should be indifferent or blind or deaf to human suffering.
Welcome to Counselor, Beyond Conventional Defense.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is William Pernig.
Alexander Martin.
Alex and I are old friends, even though we haven't seen each other in a while. We started together almost 20 years ago in a public defender's office in a small rural county of Tulare. And just this weekend, I had really distinct pleasure, Alex, of running into you at this conference that we're both attending. And we started talking about things that we really care about within our justice system. And then we decided to come out here and record one episode and see if other people care about the same things.
What is it that you're caring about right now? It was the last class, wasn't it?
You know, I agree with you. I really am thinking about some of the things we were discussing, which is the extent to which the work that we do affects us personally.
You haven't thought about that before?
I have thought about it. I have thought about it consistently for months, if not years. I just don't think I had the right framework within which to express myself or even process it, if that makes any sense.
Framework, like you didn't see the emotional wear on us, or the framework to express it? See it or express it?
I don't know about seeing it. I think for sure I felt it.
Okay.
I felt it for a very long time because I think, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, Alex, but I always felt that there were ideological differences within the community of defense lawyers.
Even politically?
Politically, I think, but also philosophically, ideologically. And so I've always envisioned, or I've always believed that there were two camps of defense lawyers, if you will. Some folks who really believed sort of in a client autonomy idea, where the client gets to make all of the decisions, no matter how terrible, no matter how awful. If the client wants to, get out of custody, get high, commit more crimes, then that's what we facilitate. If the client wants to do these crazy things to herself or himself, who are we to stop them? And then I feel like there's a different camp of attorneys where we feel like it's really our duty to recognize pain and suffering that other people are going through and use the things that we know, the things that we learn, the resources that we can marshal to try and break that cycle of really bad judgment and behavior, irrespective of the merits of the case, and try and help a person and fix a person. And these ideologies or philosophies are often in conflict, and I think that's reflected in the work that we do and some of our colleagues do. Do you agree with that?
I agree. Is there a hybrid, or are you just one or the other?
When you say hybrid, what do you mean by that?
Well, sometimes you could be thinking as a client having autonomy, and you have all these constitutional rights, and you have the benefit of being a human being, and I am not your dictator. I am here to facilitate with whatever the government is saying. So let them be free, but there's also rehabilitation. Hey, wait a minute, you've been coming back too many times. Maybe there's something we need to fix. So is there a little of a, I don't want to say it, but kind of a leash? Go out and see how many decisions you can make, but at some point I may have to pull that back.
I don't view it as a person holding somebody else's leash. I think that's how our judges view it. In fact, I've heard judges say, Mr. Pernick, I will give your client this chance that you're asking me for, but I have a lot of reservations and he or she is going to be on a very short leash. I never really liked the leash idea when we're discussing human beings, you know?
Because you're dealing with whether or not to give them the autonomy.
Right.
Because complete autonomy could be them going and wasting their life away, no intervention by maybe their only friend or confidant, an attorney, to actually stop them.
Right.
So giving them full autonomy may not necessarily be the best option.
And that's where I find myself ideologically. I just refuse to believe that we should be blind to people's really bad decision making patterns. I don't think we should be indifferent or blind or deaf to human suffering. And I think that we do belong to a class of people who have been given a remarkable, I think, privilege to practice law. I do view law as an honorable occupation. I think being a member of a legal profession is a privilege, and I do think we have a duty to try and fix the world, make it a better place, and use the law to help us get there. So I believe that it's incumbent on the defense attorney to recognize when the client is going through something that may be the true underlying cause for the behavior, that may be the very reason why they find themselves being arrested. It might be in the legal arrest, obviously, and you may have to file a motion to suppress the arrest or the search or whatever, but it may not necessarily negate the fact that your client is suffering from a mental health issue, from a substance abuse issue, that you need to get them help. And so I just never believed that we should just do whatever our clients want us to do. I feel like we need to engage them in a dialogue and try to persuade them that there is a higher road to take, that maybe there is a different path they should travel. I feel like we should use what we know. We should use the totality of human experience that we have become witnesses to over the years to try and guide people. And that's why I feel we need to be not only lawyers, but truly counselors in many ways. And we don't do that. I think we sell ourselves short, and I think we're doing clients a disservice. And I think it's very easy to do that. That's the unfortunate thing. I think our profession makes it very easy to get by doing very little.
Because it may be that our legal duty does not involve the emotional side, the equitable side. So because our legal duty only entails the legal side, as long as we check those boxes, nobody will say, but did you help that person? Did you actually help that soul? And that box never gets checked or asked.
And there is an exception to that, as both you and I know. I remember a while ago, a long time ago, you were an attorney assigned to juvenile court.
Long time
And
ago.
so in juvenile proceedings, we have a duty to look out for what's called the best interest of the client. We don't have that in adult cases. Maybe we should.
We should. I think we should. Practicing adult and juvenile at the same time, I'm able to see that. You're absolutely right. You're able to see, wait a minute, I'm not here to try to get a check mark. I'm not here, I'm not necessarily here for at the end of the day, you can suppress evidence, and you could be having motions to suppress evidence pending while still looking out for, hey, what's going on? And we still need to fix this, whether or not you adjudicated
Exactly.
a ward of the state or not.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, you're still before us because of something that happened, and you're 14. One song and the fruit of the poisonous trees are not going to help the 14-year-old with their actual issues.
And sometimes getting them out of the legal predicament they're in might be detrimental, because you're putting them back
into the mouth.
You're putting them in the same environment that produced the horror of a meth-addicted 16-year-old with a handgun in a car. The car may have been searched illegally. The gun may have been excluded, but we're still dealing with some significant problems here, right, Alex?
Especially with gangs.
Especially with gangs. That's another topic that really moved me yesterday. I went to this lecture where two gentlemen, both Hispanic, have spent decades literally in state prison for violent offenses, homicides. They were released on parole. One gentleman was there for a crime he did not commit. It just took the system a very long time to adjudicate that. And they were co-presenting on essentially what happens, how do people change, how to break that cycle in state prison. And I just kept thinking, if we're breaking that cycle in state prison, man, we're coming in very late into the game, right?
Yeah, a little late. Well, that's where the funding is at. We can actually write down what was done. This person was enrolled to do this, and they did it, and we did our job to try to help them, but we are not here to help people who are potentially falling under the trap of a gang. That is where there is no intervention.
So I want to talk to you about that. And the reason why I'm so fixated on this idea is because I've had so much difficulty with this particular population.
Which population? The gang population?
The young, at-risk clients who end up sucked into the gang. And what's frustrating for me is I've shared with you that a significant portion of my practice has become working with clients who suffer from significant mental health issues, significant substance abuse issues. So I am very cognizant of the need to, and I've literally trained every single person at my firm, from a legal assistant to paralegals to investigator to every lawyer that works as part of our team, to apply this three-step approach to every case we have. to find out what is the reason underlying the behavior in this case. Why is this person here? Why is this person seeking our services? What is the root cause, the underlying cause of the alleged criminal behavior? And then once we know what that cause is, to look for a professional solution. Perhaps a person is here because they have a substance abuse problem. The substance abuse problem was caused by a traumatic incident that never received, trauma therapy, psychotherapy. Perhaps a person is suffering from an undiagnosed mental health condition, or diagnosed but one that was never properly treated, possibly because of stigma in a community, possibly because of poverty, lack of resources, you name it, many reasons why that happens. So I feel like I've gotten pretty good and quite successful at identifying folks who struggle with these issues. But where I'm really hitting the wall is working with young people for whom the peer pressure aspect of it, I don't know if it's a social or familial, substitute aspect of it. This is what I wanted to talk to you about. But it feels like my young clients who get into custody, who end up in these gang pods, very difficult to break that cycle, almost impossible. How do we do that?
You ever put a dog in a crate?
Yeah.
So gang members have been put in a crate socially. That's where they exist. That's their life. So you're gonna have to think of how you're gonna untrain a dog from knowing where it sleeps. You can remove the crate, but it'll still sleep in the exact same spot. And that happened from the very beginning, before this person even encountered a government agent. And all of the intervention started. The intervention started after that person was doing their behavior. Very simple for a dog. The dog always lays there, but if the dog is told don't sit there in that corner anymore, it's hard to untrain if that's the only place it's ever slept.
Well, let's take a step back. So you've had some very interesting experiences growing up that I think gave you really rich perspective on young people who get in trouble. Okay.
I grew up with gang members.
You grew up in Central Valley in California. In
Sanger, California.
Sanger, California, so lots of gangs.
A lot of gangs.
And obviously you are, and I know you're going to make faces and things like that, but you are obviously an extraordinarily intelligent, successful individual.
You're right about the faces.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
But I mean, considering the environment to which you were born.
I had great parents, though.
You had amazing parents.
I had really great parents that talked to me about gangs and said, there's that life, and I'm going to physically instill fear in you if you go there. So I was more scared of my parents. The common thread between everybody that I saw that would go into gangs was they didn't have parents. They didn't have authority. They didn't have somebody to tell them where they're supposed to sleep at night and why they're supposed to sleep there.
And I think that's particularly common in the immigrant communities, because I reflect on my immigrant experience, coming to this country when I was 15 years old. And I know a lot of our clients come here from somewhere else, usually Mexico, considering, that we work in, in California and agricultural counties. These are, the populations of clients we work with. But my experience was that, we came from a country where my parents were somebody. They had jobs, they had lives, they had friends, they were part of a social structure. And then when you come to this country, you start from nothing. And it's very dangerous for a teenager to see your parents reduced to that, or just not be.
I think you've hit it right in the head, and it's not just that you start from nothing, you start below nothing.
Maybe even below nothing.
And I don't mean necessarily poverty, because you're not starting at a level of I am nothing. You're starting at a level from I don't exist here because I may be illegal here. I'm not supposed to be here, so I'm not actually here.
Well, that's a unique additional challenge that we didn't have because we came here, with legal status. So at least with all of the challenges that we had, the one thing we did not have to do was sort of, look over your shoulder, is ICE coming to arrest grandma,
Right. And when you're constantly thinking of is ICE coming to arrest grandma when you're little, you're not necessarily thinking of the government as your friend. So intervention programs, social programs, those aren't things that you're looking out for. Those are things that you're avoiding. You're avoiding the knock on the door. You're just going to stay in seclusion. And the best way to stay in seclusion is to join a gang.
Why?
Because you're no longer an individual. You lost that. You never were that anyways. You were never part of this society. So since you were never part of this society, you are part of a society. And you belong within that. You have a moniker and you have a ranking system. So you now are receiving the discipline that you were supposed to have received somewhere else.
And we are learning that when we attend professional, trainings and conferences, that gangs provide what society fails to give to our young people. They give them social structure, they give them parenting, they give them rules. And so when you have failed families, sometimes intentionally, sometimes just by virtue of life and needs to provide, to work multiple jobs, but when you have parents who are either bad parents or absent parents, when you have law enforcement that's not your friend, and when you receive your basically familial guidance, social guidance, and rule-based guidance elsewhere, that's how you end up becoming, I think, devoted to the cause.
I think the strongest conversation that somebody can have is with their attorney, because it's probably it has to be the most confidential conversation you can have. You can't even have confidentiality with somebody from your religious sect, right? It would have to be your attorney. But if you see an individual who's so entrenched in a gang,
or you get the cold stare. Have you ever? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely, and
yeah.
they need to consult with somebody else before they even consult with you.
100%, Alex. And it's so frustrating, Alex, because we'll have, let's say, a parent call us, and they will say, "Oh, Miguelito is only 18. We don't know what happened to him. He's not a gang member. He, just had bad friends, bad influences. We've done everything for him." Then I go visit Miguelito, and man, I get a cold stare. I mean, the kid's got straight back. He is refusing to engage. He's got this like ice shell that's really hard to break through sometimes, and he's there on attempt murder.
Well, his parents are no longer his authoritative figure. So you were brought in by the parents, and the parents aren't necessarily they're not the connect. So when you meet a child, normally the parents say, "Hey, this is Uncle William, this is Uncle Pernick," right? Oh, and then they all of a sudden start to like you. They don't know why they like you. They know that the parents said it's okay. The parents have already lost that child. So that child is already with the gangs. They still love that child, so they are seeking assistance for that child. But you didn't come in with any bigger badge just because you know mom and dad.
But if Big Homie brought me in...
If Big Homie... Oh, you're who? You're Big Homie's lawyer? Well, then I have to listen to everything you said, because Big Homie has now become my authoritative figure.
That's really interesting, Alex. I haven't quite thought about it in those terms before.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And so tell me this. Now, you obviously, end up in college, you end up in law school, you end up in public defender's office, then you end up in private practice where you are today. And yet, even though you're different, you're making the right choices as opposed to the wrong choices. Has that spared you from some of the indignities that our clients have as a young man?
No, I still experienced hatred, guilt, not a sense of belonging. My dad did not come here illegally. My dad came here illegally and later obtained status. So he would be completely thrown out today if we were in different times. But my dad did come over when there was a need for agricultural help, right? And then the amnesties came and all of those things. So you see a different world when your family and your parents only belong because of what they're doing at the moment, which is not necessarily the highest of professions. Nobody goes to school and says, "My parent's a field worker," even though that's really the only reason why you're still here. So you still have to go through that. And you go through the part of society where you're thinking, okay, I'm worthless, but God gave me some type of gift or some skill that I can differentiate myself from other individuals. I want to benefit from that skill, and I want to take advantage of it because that's what my parents taught me. Not everybody else gets that. If you just grow up with, and I hate to say it, but maybe just a normal IQ, not to bring myself higher than some other individuals, but I know that I had a higher IQ than most of my peers who were joining gangs. In fact, I probably wasn't cool enough to join those gangs because I was too busy doing math and getting all the math
problems. As
opposed
to smoking meth.
Right, as opposed to smoking meth. So it all of a sudden became, oh, Alex isn't cool. But I will say this, there were some individuals that said, don't mess with Alex, I'm using other words, because he's trying to go to school. Right? So there were some individuals that understood what they were doing wasn't necessarily what was making our parents proud, but at least he's trying to do it. And then there were other individuals that said, I don't really care. None of us are making it out of here, and that's just the end of the story.
And I've always had this theory too, that sometimes you have a young person And we know from research that, before a person fully matured, which sometimes doesn't happen until, mid 20s, before their whatever frontal lobes, before their frontal lobes fully develop, before they get that sense of maturity. So I've always had this theory that if you are a person who is having a hard time making the right decisions, but you struggle to do those nonetheless. And now you have one foot on this side of the line where you're going to school, you are getting good grades, you're studying, you're trying to become someone. But you are a member of this vulnerable community, vulnerable group. You're very much at high risk of becoming a gang member, becoming a statistic, becoming, juvenile delinquent, whatever. And then, on the other side of that is obviously doing what's easy, joining the gang, committing crimes, doing drugs, having, good time, burning life, right? And then you have contact with a person like a police officer or a judge or a member of community who is supposed to lead by example, doing the right thing instead of the wrong thing, but they don't. How does that affect your perception? And how does that affect your ability to make good choices going forward?
Oh, you've given up completely in the system. There's no way that you're going to adhere to the rules of a system that cannot follow them themselves. And just because you live in the ghetto or you just grew up uneducated does not mean you don't see the same police officer committing the same crimes, doing the exact same stuff, because they know that nobody's going to believe you, right? Can you imagine how many times do clients tell us, so-and-so officer did this, so-and-so officer did that? Most of the time we know, well, maybe, maybe not. But the times that it did happen, that's an individual who has now witnessed an officer do something. That's an individual that is never going to trust authority. They're never going to trust the government. Well, maybe not never until someone else comes in, I guess.
But you're yes, and there are, and I think it's possible to recover from a really negative experience. It may take a number of really positive experiences. Like a lot of people can talk a lot of trash about their public defenders, and then they will meet somebody like, I think you and I have really tried, man. Almost, I guess, 20 years ago, 18 years ago. I mean, I remember us working nights. I remember us working evenings. I remember us spending our own money to buy things that the office sometimes didn't provide, just so we could help somebody. Just like public school teachers, buying their own, whatever equipment. We were doing that
that's
too.
Because we saw humans.
We saw humans, right? And so I guess if a person has a lot of good experiences, or even maybe like one super significant experience with a public defender who cares, who does a good job, that might, correct their perception. But with police officers in particular in these marginalized communities, like on the outskirts of, Fresno, in Sanger, or maybe in the south part of our county, Gonzales, Greenfield, King City, things that happen in East Salinas at night, some of the areas of Santa Clara County where we practice, on the outskirts of Gilroy. These kids, when they're contacted by somebody who stops them illegally, searches them illegally, does things to them that are unfair, like you said, they can feel unfairness. They're not stupid. They're not blind. Now, how does that affect their decision to stay within the rules as opposed to go outside?
Well, at that point, you're basically making a decision between following the authority again, or should I go back to what they've already told me? Everything that I learned from the homies when I was growing up was, the police are going to do this. The police are bad. Everything that I'm hearing is how horrible they are. And then my first contact, or one of my many contacts with them, are exactly as was told by the group. And maybe it's just because of the biases being brought by the police officer. Oh, here comes another hoodlum. They're going to act like a hoodlum. And the hoodlum says, oh, here comes a police officer. They're going to act just like a pig. And they both come with those ideas that exact very moment. And they act on everything like, wasn't it Macbeth that acted on everything that he told to do?
It confirms it. It's basically confirmation of all of the biases that you had, and at that point, it might as well be written in stone.
Can you imagine if I have just been completely indoctrinated by everything that a police officer is based on the gang, and then I, for some reason, decided to listen to the police officer, and he said, hello, sir, I just wanted to say hi, you have a good day, and walked away. That would have been the most amazing moment, because that police officer would have gotten rid of all of his biases, not said, hey, let me check your license or registration, what are you doing around here, what's going on? I've had very just regular conversations where I'm going from Sanger to Parlier. I was about 18 years old. I don't have to adhere to any curfew. And was told by police officers, and anybody could tell me today, oh, it's okay, they're just trying to keep the peace. They said, what are you doing over here? I said, well, I came to visit a girl. A girl came over to, she said, come on by. Police officer said you can't come over here. Why? You're not from here. License says Sanger. What does that have to do with it? You don't want to be over here because the guys over here don't want guys from over there taking their girls. I don't know how a police officer is now regulating the border between two towns, but the police officer is now doing that. So what's my impression? That's just a simple little fact. That doesn't involve any gangs. But just that, I think, who are you?
Well, I remember a different story about you.
I know this story.
Yeah. And
It's how I was hired at the public defender's office.
It is how you were hired at the public defender's office. This is a story that Alex told at his hiring interview.
I forgot it was an interview. I thought we were just giving out our grievances.
Yeah, we both had an opportunity to work in a very interesting place. It was a long time ago, almost 2 decades ago. Times were different, people were different. Some of the people who were there are no longer there. Some people are no longer with us on this earth. They've, we've learned from the good experiences and the bad ones. We've learned from the good experiences and the bad ones. But Alex had an amazing story that I think got him hired as a deputy public defender.
I don't understand. Why have you finally pulled me over? And they said, you didn't put your signal on.
Do you feel that if the officers or some of the officers were not white, this wouldn't have happened?
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.